Chapter 5, Episode 14, Anomalies in the Otherworldly Laboratory. After hearing Emmerich's story, Pharma returned to the de Medici's family mansion. Suspecting that Lot's father had a family history of lethal familial insomnia, and called Catherine, Lot's mother and maid of honor, who was taking in the laundry in the garden. "Catherine," she said, "I'm sorry to bother you, I'm a little busy. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you when you're free." "Yes, Pharma, my little girl. Yes, Pharma, my dear. I'm at your service. It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" Catherine seemed to have finished work early and was in a good mood. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but may I ask you about your late husband?" "Oh, little boy. Why not? Why is that? By all means. The most important thing to remember is that you should not be afraid to ask for help." "I'm sorry for reminding you. I'm sorry I reminded you. If you insist, little man, I understand." I showed Catherine to Pharma's room and locked the door. It would be a shock if Lot had inadvertently walked in and overheard what we were talking about. I listened to Catherine's story while taking notes. "What kind of illness did your husband suffer from?" I asked. "Yes. I never told you about it." Catherine took a deep breath and began to speak, sometimes stammering, as if tracing an old memory. "My husband and I lived on the St. Hulve frontier, where he was a tailor. Yes, we had Charlotte and lived happily together until 1138. But I think it was in the winter of 1138 that he started to change a little bit. My husband gradually became a different person. He lost his sanity day by day, he couldn't walk well, he was sweating profusely and became a different person. I could tell something was wrong with my husband." Catherine turned her head and looked deeply saddened. "I couldn't work, I couldn't lay my body down to sleep, I was exhausted day after day, and I often stared at one point to see what was on my mind." Charlotte was still very young, so I don't think she remembers much about her husband. "We took him to see a doctor and a well-known pharmacist, but he just shook his head and said he didn't know. My husband finally lost consciousness and passed away in June 1139 at the age of 42. She cried, saying that it was painful to be by her husband's side as he weakened, and that she felt as if her heart would break. He was 42 years old. And when I asked him about his symptoms, it seems like a hit." Pharma couldn't find the words to say to Catherine, who was in agony. "Thank you for telling me. After my husband died, I called a priest to give him a funeral, but he told me that he had been possessed by an evil spirit. It was my fault. I should have had the priest exorcise the evil spirits earlier." "I don't think so. I think your husband was sick, though I can't say for sure because I didn't examine him." Pharma tried to comfort Catherine to get rid of her guilt, but Catherine seemed to be filled with remorse. "I have never told Charlotte about this. I know it would be painful for her to hear." "Please?" "Yes, I won't tell her. Later. Because she was in high debt for treatment and medication." Catherine had no choice but to sell her tailor store and house, take the still young Lot with her, and go into service to a nobleman's mansion on her own. Because the temple had declared the cause of death to be a curse, she was rejected by all of the employers who conducted background checks on her. In the midst of all this, he took a chance and knocked on the door of the Medici's family, a large aristocratic family. Bruno was not averse to the idea of working for them even after learning of his situation. On the contrary, he said, "If I am cursed, it would be interesting." He said, "If you were cursed, it would be interesting to study how to break the curse." It was also fortunate that Catherine had sewing skills. "Don't be too bossy, Mr. Bruno." It was when Lot had just turned 4 years old that Bruno picked her up, and Lot's mother came with her to serve at the Medici's mansion. She was just 4 years old when Lot was picked up by Bruno and sent to work with him at the Medici's mansion. "Oh, I see. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear about your husband's parents. I heard they died early after all." Farmer asks for further family history. Catherine pulled out an old memory. "Yes, I have heard that his father's side of the family died early." "Was he from an orphanage by any chance?" Catherine asks. "Well, that's as far as goes, but why do you think so?" Catherine nodded her head. Seeing this, Catherine forced a smile, perhaps out of concern for Pharma. She said, "My dear boy, please don't look at me like that. If the master had not found us, Charlotte and I would have been on the street. I am grateful to the master for giving us a good life." But Catherine seemed suspicious that Pharma had inquired about Lot's background. "If I may ask, did something happen to Charlotte?" "No, nothing. I'm just curious. I'll tell you if there's something wrong." Pharma nodded firmly and made a promise to Catherine. Next, Pharma visited the servants' room shared by Lot and Catherine. "Lot, are you all right now? Can I come in?" Oh, what is it, Pharma-sama? Come in." Lot had just opened the attic window and was practicing a still life sketch with a piece of fruit on the windowsill, but she was embarrassed to be humming merrily. She was embarrassed to be humming so merrily. "May I take your blood just after I draw it? I'm going to check if Lot's blood is healthy or not." "Will it hurt when you take my blood?" "I'll make it painless. It won't take long. I'll make it painless and it will be over soon." "Then by all means, please check. Thank you very much for taking care of me. I just finished practicing drawing." "Like this?" Lot, with an innocent smile on her face, holds out her arm to him, and Pharma, feeling a little guilty, prepares the blood collection kit she has prepared. Then, as announced, she created ice and put it on her arm to make it less painful when she inserted the needle. Lot was tense, her eyes squeezed shut, and her shoulders stiffened. There was a pause. "I'm done. Good job." Pharma called out to Lot as she tipped over the blood collection tube, shook Lot's blood, and let it react with the anticoagulant. She then calls out to Lot, "It didn't hurt. But so much blood has been taken. Wow, it's my blood. It's creeping me out." Lot doesn't seem to like the sight of blood. "Thanks for cooperating," she said. "Does your arm tingle or feel fluffy?" "No, nothing. No problem, Mr. Pharma." Lot went around in front of Pharma, bent down, and looked up at Pharma's face, which had been downcast from below. "What is it? What is it? Something is wrong with you, Pharma-sama. He is not acting the way he usually does." Lot might have inherited a fatal familial insomnia, which is considered incurable according to modern pharmacology. It seems that Pharma's fears and anxieties have been passed on to Lot. She may seem insensitive, but she was watching Pharma very closely. She didn't say it in words, but... "No, I don't. I see. Well, then, good luck with your work." Lot undid the loose ribbon on Pharma's collar and tied it back up tightly. "Thank you, Lot." Pharma was told that Emmerich had gathered his younger siblings, so he immediately asked them all to gather in the laboratory. There were 6 of them, including Emmerich. Zoe, the secretary, served tea and tea cakes to the family members who had gathered in a hurry. Ellen also came to work at the laboratory. "Professor, I brought my family." "Thank you, that's very kind of you." "Thank you, Bauer family, for gathering with us. By the way, your sister really looks like Lot." 2 of the younger sisters certainly looked a lot like Lot, as Emmerich said. "They have innocent faces and seem friendly. Even their voices are somewhat similar, and I would be convinced if they were Lot's relatives. You know, they look so much alike." "I knew you would say so, Professor." Emmerich is happy that Pharma agrees. "I didn't think you could tell by looking at them." "I didn't think you could tell by looking at them, but aren't they related?" Ellen nodded. However, this was not very pleasant information for Pharma. Maybe it's just someone else's likeness. If they look this much alike, maybe it's just a coincidence. "So how do we find out if we have the disease?" "By PCR again?" Ellen twists her head. "Yeah, that'll work. To find out if there is a blood relationship between Lot and Emmerich's families, we can do the PCR method, just like Pharma did before with the paternity test. Then, we can apply the PCR method a little to find out if any of their family members have a genetic mutation that may cause lethal familial insomnia." In modern Japan, DNA sequencers, a device that reads base sequences at high speed, can easily read a vast amount of DNA information and mutations. However, it is not impossible to detect only a small fraction of mutations by an analog method using electrophoresis. It is a method that can be reproduced well enough in this laboratory, and I will teach that to Ellen and Emmerich at a later date. Well, where do you want me to start with your family? I've explained the general situation to them. That will make things easier. Can I take a sample of your blood for DNA? With the cooperation of Emmerich and all his sisters and brothers, Pharma prepares to take blood samples in the same way as Lot. If we want to get a sufficient amount of DNA for analysis, it is preferable to take it from blood rather than from oral mucosa cells. After tightening the blood preservation band, we choose a blood vessel. Once you have the tourniquet fastened, select a blood vessel. A blood vessel that you can touch and feel is good. If you can see colored blood vessels on the surface, they are not very good. Hey, Pharma, how about this one? Ellen, who was examining the blood vessels, found a good one on her brother's arm and asked Pharma for confirmation. Ellen, who was examining the blood vessels, found a good one in her brother's arm. You found a good one, Ellen. Can I take your blood? I've always wanted to try it. Ellen wants to try drawing blood. I think it's a person's arm. Farmer chuckles. If that's the case, I'd like to try it too. Emmerich is starting to get ahead of himself. You two shouldn't do it out of the blue, he said. It's your first time. Let's not do it because your sisters and brothers' arms will turn blue. Next time, we'll practice taking blood samples with a mock arm. No, if it's only a little, let them put up with it. Emmerich started to make radical remarks, so Lot's two younger sisters hid behind Pharma and kept their mouths shut. We want Professor Medici's to take our blood. Hey. Yes, sister. I don't want to have blood all over my arm. I'll take care of it, don't worry. Then I'll take care of it. While showing them how to draw blood, Pharma also taught the two observers how to do the same. The cut end of the needle should point upward and penetrate the skin to the blood vessels. Next, dark venous blood returns, and you pull the syringe with your ring and pinky fingers. Pull the syringe with your ring and pinky fingers so that your hand does not shake. When the syringe is pulled out, the tourniquet is removed. Then, quickly pull out the needle. If you don't untie the tourniquet first, the blood will gush out. It looks pretty difficult now that you mention it. Ellen gave up on drawing blood on her own for the time being, and Emmerich was doing image training by watching Pharma draw blood one after the other. As one would expect from a first-class pharmacist at the top of his class, he is an enthusiastic student. Pharma gave Emmerich a glance. I can't make you draw blood today, but would you like to try extracting DNA from the blood? I can't let you draw blood today, but would you like to try extracting DNA from the blood? First, the cells are ruptured in a small test tube, then an enzyme is added to dissolve the cells and the tube is heated. They wait for the enzyme reaction to finish, and once the cells are lysed, they add phenol and chloroform and stir well. The cells are then centrifuged in a manual centrifuge. The supernatant portion is removed, and alcohol is added to it. As soon as it was stirred, a fluffy white transparent thread-like substance began to drift in the alcohol in the test tube. Professor Medici's, could this be? Yes, it's DNA. It is yours. A mass of white threads. A substance that could only be described as such was floating around in the alcohol. It's kind of like fragile cotton. It's like it's going to tear right off. Ellen looked at it with a less than appreciative expression on her face. I can't believe this. Is a blueprint of the human body. That actually exists. Emmerich's hand shakes as he holds the tube. It must seem like a forbidden sanctuary to Emmerich. Oh my God. You're overreacting. It's DNA, it's real, and it's in our body cells. When Ellen patted Emmerich on the back, he was so startled that his hand slipped and the tube fell out and rolled away. Ah, what are you doing? Drive. Bonnefoy. Don't drop the tube, you two, or you'll have to start all over again hours ago. Thelma broke out in a cold sweat, not wanting to see her precious samples thrown away. Let's analyze this tomorrow, he said. Let's break up for today. It's time for the lecture. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay. Pharma went to the lecture with Emmerich. After the day's lecture, Pharma packed the DNA of the entire family that she and Ellen and Emmerich had extracted, as well as Lot's sample, which Pharma had extracted beforehand, in an ice-cooled bag. Then, I prepared an ample supply of spellbooks that absorb divine power, which Solomon regularly offers to Pharma. The last time I returned from the other world, my body had become quite transparent. If I went back and forth to the other world again, the risk of extinction would go up. I don't want to go there because I don't know what will happen, but I guess I have to go to that place. Since then, I had decided to stay away from the laboratory in the other world, which can be reached from Sacred Spring, but if I want to do advanced analysis, I need the facilities of the laboratory. I can't say that. The purpose of going to the otherworldly lab is to obtain accurate genetic information of patients by using analyzers, to get the reagents, books, and tools necessary for the research. These are the two main reasons. For the sake of his students in Lot, he must make a more detailed genetic diagnosis as soon as possible and establish a cure for a disease that is incurable even with modern pharmacology. Okay, let's go. Pharma gripped the staff of the god of medicine and was hungry. Where are we going? Where are you going, Pharma? Is that sample? Ellen called out from behind her, emerging from the lab next to the professor's office. Pharma had assumed that Ellen had left, but it seems that she had remained at the university, concerned about Pharma. Ellen, did you still stay all the way? No, I was also preparing for a lecture. Where were you going? With the DNA sample I said I'd analyze tomorrow. Maybe a place where you won't be able to come back? Like the other world you mentioned the other day, the one you can go to from the Holy Spring. Ellen knew it was something to do with Lot, and she had it all figured out. I have something that I really need. I really need something, and I want to get it. For Lot and for Emmerich and his family. I'm sure they'll be safe, Pharma explains. You're not sure you can make it back safely? It's too dangerous. Ellen was in tears. But I don't want to regret not doing the best I could have done. If Lot or someone close to her had an incurable genetic disease, I would do something about it as soon as possible. Emmerich seems to think that the deadly disease starts to develop in one's 40s, but this is not necessarily the case. In some cases, people develop the disease in childhood and die. There is no guarantee that you will be safe until you are old enough to die. Besides, I'm not like most people, and I don't think I can stay in this world forever. I could disappear tomorrow. I might disappear tomorrow, so it doesn't matter where I go or what I do. So I'm going today. I'm in such a hurry, Mr. Farmer. Why are you in such a hurry, Farmer? Can't you at least wait another year or two? It's too late then. See you later, Ellen. Without waiting for Ellen's reply, Pharma opened the window and ran out. The fact that he was kept back did not change his mind. When I finished writing the textbook, I left the least amount of knowledge and concepts in this world. Even if I disappeared now, I would not have any regrets but less than before. Sorry, Ellen. I'm going. Pharma apologized to Eren in his heart and passed his divine power through the medicine wand. He became the wind and flew over the imperial city. By the time Pharma reached the holy spring located in the center of the misty plateau, it was already dark. Compared to before, there was no change in the holy spring. It was still filled with pure water, just as it had been then. Pharma dove into the night fountain without hesitation. Then, without diving very deep, he used his divine art to put ice on the surface of the water from behind the surface. Then, he saw the entrance to the other world. It was the door to the laboratory of the other world. Pharma took out his staff ID card and held it over the electronic authentication device. He held it up once or twice, but the reading response was sluggish. Bleep. The third time, the electronic lock finally disengages and the door to the laboratory opens in the middle. The movement of the door opening was not as smooth as before. Rusty? The change is so subtle that I can't remember if it was the same before. I seem to be hypersensitive, me. Must be my imagination. I slide my body inside the same way as before and sneak into the interior of the lab. Once inside, I miss the smell of the lab's air conditioning and the sounds of the freezers and equipment operating. All the equipment was in working order. I checked the clock. It was 3:50 a.m. So far, no change from the last time. The clock ticks forward as soon as I enter the room. It seemed as if this place was repeating the hour before Associate Professor Yakutani's death. In other words, about an hour left to stay. Then, Pharma sees something that he wanted to keep out of sight as much as possible. Kanji Yakutani, himself before his death, was wrapped in a sleeping bag on the sofa, sleeping peacefully. Am I the same as before? I wish I could leave the room on my own before I die. I wish I could get out of my room before I die. If possible, I don't want to hear my own demise twice. Last time, probably the moment Yakutani's heart stopped beating, Pharma was also forcibly purged from this laboratory. But if it was before he died, would he be able to leave through the exit normally? This time, Pharma wanted to do so. If he begins to suffer, I must leave him and leave the lab without hesitation. I can treat others, but I can't interfere with Yakutani's body and can't treat myself. It was frustrating, but there was no way around it. It was ironic. Pharma is the first to approach the control PC next to the large analysis equipment. The genome analysis data is ready for. I knew it. It was the data of his own genome information that Pharma had planted when he entered the laboratory last time. The analysis would normally take a week to complete, but the data had been analyzed, transcending time and space. Although it seemed to be repeating the same hour before his death, the time of the analyzer was advancing. The time axis is in a bad way. After staying for only 1 hour, the physical body becomes transparent. It seems to be okay that he only stayed for 1 hour, but Pharma does not even want to think about what would happen if he stayed for a longer period of time. If you keep coming back, your body won't just go away. But at what cost? So now it is clear. I don't know if I'm human or not. Pharma unravels the data. The species name was determined. The genome information was that of a human being. Pharma was even moved. Were the otherworldly people related to the Homo sapiens of the Earth after all? The genetic information of the body of Pharma de Medicis was the same as that of the Earth's people, with a probability of more than 99.9%. This difference was at most only about the difference in sex and race. Pharma excitedly scrutinizes the data. Pharma's genetic information was probably the same as that of the boy. Although Pharma's body has some inhuman characteristics, such as the lack of shadows, his genetic information was not so different from that of a human being. Great data. ... There must be a gene that controls the expression of the divine pulse. Which one? Some unknown genes were also detected, which is not possible for Earthlings. Its expression was controlled by genes that Pharma had never seen before when he ran the search. There were 5 of them. Perhaps one of them is a candidate for the gene controlling the divine pulse. Pharma copied some of the data into his favorite notebook PC. If he could bring this back to the other world, he would be able to perform further analysis as long as he could secure a power supply. He also made copies of medical and pharmacological information and papers that he thought he would need. In addition, Pharma packed his medical and pharmacological books in plastic bags and stuffed them into a large handbag. He also put his PC and smartphone in plastic bags and carried them on his back like a backpack. Now, at any point in the purge, I could rest easy for a moment. Then I fulfilled my original purpose of visiting this lab. Set Emmerich's family and Lot's DNA into the genome analyzer. Even with a simple analysis, it takes time to get the data. We would have to leave the other world once and come back to get the data again. Looking around the laboratory, Pharma felt a certain discomfort. The door to the culture room is open and the lights are on. The door of the cell culture room adjacent to the laboratory was open and there was a gap. And there is electricity in the room. The last time I came here, the room did not open even when I pushed or pulled the door. Is the other world getting bigger? There was a change taking place in the laboratory of the other world that could not be overlooked.